thank you for joining us again, both in person and online. We've noticed the absence of Robbie Tulip and his music. Sadly for us, happily for Robbie, he's camping in the National Park near Broken Hill. And he's having a nice time with us. This evening we're delighted to welcome again our very own Mary. It's lovely to have you here tonight. Sarah of the Hill Society and well known to most of us here. Mary has conducted self-awareness and personal development workshops in Canberra and South Coast and overseas for over 30 years as well. Interactive talks with Alpine Women's Group and public demonstrations for the Canberra Spiritualist Association. From the early 1970s, Mary attended various personal development, meditation, spiritual awareness groups. These concentrated becoming our true selves and finding inner peace within oneself. It was not until the end of her 10-day Evening Yoga Intensive at Ashram in 1985 that she actually gained insight into other dimensions of existence. Mary will talk to us for about an hour on the intelligence beyond the brain, so that's really interesting. And then we'll finish about 9:15 and have a break for 15 minutes, and we'll come back and have questions. But before we hear online, please remain muted while Mary is speaking to avoid background noise. Use the Zoom chat button for comments and questions. I'd like to hand you over to Mary. Thank you very much.
I'm not used to speaking without a microphone, so I'm going to have to raise my voice. And when I go into a meditative state, in order to tap into my higher consciousness, my voice drops. So you might have to remind me not hearing me. Okay? Because it happens when I concentrate on different levels. Okay, my subject is intelligence beyond the brain. This is purely on, naturally we have to have a brain and we all operate in a brain. But there is a lot more knowledge within ourselves. John, would you put the second slide on, please? Right, the quote from Einstein: "Whatsoever the humblest of men may tell me from their own experience, I will listen to with attention. Whatsoever the humblest of men may tell me from their own experiment, I will adopt with attention. But what the bumptious man may tell me from his opinion, I disregard. For opinion is a word which is used to mask prejudice and to often, most often, in the mouth of those who have done nothing for themselves, but only read and sometimes read the opinions of others or the ideas of others. So when we follow a leader of any kind, whether it's Yom or Freud or Buddha, whatever, we have them on a pedestal, we put ourselves below their knowledge. So, in Sidha Yoga, I learned that all suffering comes from lack of oneness. And if we believe that all men are born equal, then the moment we feel either threatened or overpowered by anybody, we're already empowering ourselves. We're not giving us the strength to equal that person. Because that reaches to which is true. So I'm not saying we should ignore all leaders and do our own thing. What I'm saying is that we don't know our inner powers until we tap into And with me, I often know from what part of my body the information comes into. Sometimes it's from the solar plexus, sometimes it's from the heart chakra. But next time, please, no? That's really we're both dinosaurs. Number 3.
Intelligence beyond the brain.
Inner knowledge, that's how it's it's marked number 3, yes. So, scroll again. Number 3, thanks. Given that we all have a soul or a spirit or a higher consciousness, we all have knowledge beyond the data stored in our brain. So what we've learned today is everything in our brain today is the information. What we've learned today, what we've touched, what we've seen, what we've heard, and it's also something that you may not be able to recall it at given times, but it's there. Right? And that's your brain's tapping into your own spirit or higher self without years of meditation. That's what I'd like to illustrate to you today. Expressing what we sense versus to what we know. So I've spent many years sort of sitting in Lotus position, meditating, trying to keep my mind blank. And eventually I discovered if I take some of this time and try to bring a person's mind, I'm already not in there. I'm sensing so it's immediate. Immediate touch or sensing as opposed to thinking, because it's no thinking. I was only telling this morning over it, I was at a coffee morning, and so many years ago, I got a phone call early in the morning, random say early, before I went off to work. And this lady was quite distressed, she lived in a hole somewhere, and about her grandson who'd been fished out of his pool, unconscious, face down in water. Now that immediately gives anybody hearing that gives you a jolt automatically. And she said he was in hospital in a respirator and she wants to know from me what he can pull through. Now I call that heavy duty request, you know, as a clairvoyant, people expect you to know straight away, but I've got my own life to lead too, so I was sort of getting ready for work. My husband had gone to work, and their son had gone off to school, and my mind was completely elsewhere. Now, I was listening to her because I vaguely remember her. I didn't know anything about it, you know. So, as she was giving me more information, she said it was a daughter-in-law who had taken her son to walk to the garden at her parents' place, who had been running through it. She took her eyes off the pink for a little while she was hosing inside of the garden. And the next thing is, she turned around and hit him in the field face down. And by the time she let go of her, she ran over there. The child was unconscious. I think it was about 18 months at this stage. And then I take a deep breath and I listen to her. And I just close my touch floor, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. I just, and I couldn't get an image at all of this particular play. These are all down in the sits and I said, I'm not getting any images that I feel absolutely no grieving, no pain. I said, if your grandson is going to pass over, I would feel your immense pain. I would feel that deep, deep pain of losing a grandson. I would feel the pain of your son having lost his precious, his baby. And I said, I'm not getting any of that. I'm not seeing you or any young couple crying at a funeral. So from that, I conclude that it will fall through. But as I say, the woman is distressed, and that's my only link with who I can't afford to tap into her emotions because that would be misleading. So, I know, so if I can't do an image, I just unfold what I'm not getting, and that's a definite statement. And then I did hear from her again, and I thought, no, we must pull through. And months later, I started exploding, just by coincidence, I bumped into an Easter, and I went up to her and I said, your grandson pulled through, didn't he? She said, oh yes, 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 yes. She said, sort of fast, you know, sort of so far back. She promised, oh, well, it would be nice if you just to, you know, although I felt no stress, started to get confirmation. And a few years ago, John and I were on a cruise ship, and we were on a table for two in very close proximity to other couples, tables for two. And we didn't know the couple that was sitting there. We need to pray for us. Anyway, we come to leave the table. The lady called out to me and she said, I just had acupuncture today for the first time upstairs. Have you been? And I said, no, I have had acupuncture, but I haven't been upstairs in the treatment area. And I can't remember what she said. I said, did you fall on yours when you were 14? She looked at me, you know, and I had no idea where it sort of seemed to come from the side axis. I just sensed that when she had mentioned her back, I immediately tapped into a fork and I said, did you fall on your right? And she said, I can't remember. She would have been in the 50s. She said, I can't remember. And it didn't really matter because if you were what the images I was given, that you have the impact you took on your right shoulder. This is your neck, and therefore you have a pain right there. So I pointed to the area, and she said, yes, that's right. Anyway, I went up to the academy and asked me what business I was doing. I was in touch with her. I went to see her class. And I just had a you're holding yourself about passion or whatever. You're not treating them as equal. But if you say this person's come, because it is drifted into my mouth. And I was just falling. There was an enormous heat coming from my hands, which I can't explain or where it comes from. And so I did that twice. The third time I wasn't there very long, and I decided to use things. I just went past we were cruising through the Pacific Islands, which I volcanic metaphor. So I came there once into the little weather she had. So I left and he said, me and I went to my cabin and I didn't see much of the time, but we at Central Station go back to Canberra on night. And all of a sudden I hear a voice, oh, Mary, and I'm looking around Central Station, Sydney's right there, and see, and it echoes, you know, so I have no idea where the voice was. And she's over here, come back. She's my backpack's gone. So I don't know, the backpack's gone. And while I was with her, I talked about, I said, who is that you emotionally need to deal with that? And she said, my elder sister. She was a matron of a hospital and was always, from the time she was born, always finding to lay each young out on my shoulders. About 5 foot less. My sister always told me I'm stupid. And I said, well, perhaps it's time for you to tell her look straight in the face and let her know you're not enjoying that and it hasn't helped her be better with her sister's name. Still believes you're stupid after 55 years of telling you that whatever she's doing is not working for you. And so once it asked what it's doing, what she enjoys about it. And whatever she did about it, I don't even know her name, but it was somewhere in New South Wales. But the combination metaphor, and probably familiar with the book, Who's the Matter with Me, written at Louise, as she talks about the house. Who's the matter with me? So something on the bunk or whatever. And it's very, very interesting irritations. Okay, so we go on to the next slide, number 4. I've got a podcast. So we have lessons of a very active. See, I don't go around telling people it's nice to know you again, or it's nice to taste you again, and create a real spirit. So we go, and yeah, and the thinking part versus the brain, and when I'm sensing and doing into people, I'm opening up on the soul collective traces and heart chakra, and often the throat chakra in order to express it. But the thinking and the interpretation have to go back into the brain to do that. And often it's very difficult to put into words as to what I've sensed. Because as I say, the business about this lady having fallen off the bush when she was 14. Certainly it was not in my brain. I had no knowledge of how I didn't know her, didn't know her name. I introduced myself. And this little girl husband project my life today. And anyway, so I feel there are all these different senses, and when I open up to it, it's amazing what you can sense. But then I feel workshops and sensing what we're doing, my direction, see or heard or smell or taste or touch. And the ears know they are more through my own experiences. Now we begin with six. I think people creative visualization for something from object to the God being mentioned by people like children, other stages, mentioned, and feel unsafe or threatened by family lives. Relaxation is very necessary to sense and human other people. So I really create visualization I might just do a little quick one just to see what happens. Are you ready to concentrate? So I just close your eyes and relax and just visualize the apple. Doesn't matter what shape, size, flavor, whatever. But try and make it real. Smell it, smell. Might even be able to taste it. Not change your mind, change your mind. Just that. Don't fight it. No, I haven't had any. So be having the leaves on the top, you're saying it's because that's really fresh. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the leaves on it. So it's fresh apple. What does that symbolize to you?
We like to go to the owner and pick apples in the orchard.
And what's the feeling that comes?
Getting a fruit from a balance with nature, like to kind of ask yourself, choose what you want to eat and enjoy it.
So it's the healthiness and the freshness of it and being free to select it.
Yes, and the family kind of outing.
So that's very happy memories. Anybody else? No? That's all right. That's what we did. Yes, at one part of it was green as well. Green. It wasn't real, it was painting. Oh,
tells you something about yourself, and it's your own personal experience. And a lot of people, like I mentioned here, Freud and Carl Jung, created theories and techniques and principles of what they had observed, learned, and discovered for themselves. And when you see the same confirmation several times over, it's no longer an imagination. It's no longer, it becomes a fact, to you at least, you know. And then you can talk about it more. But everything we see around us, whether it's the microphone, the chairs, laptop, whatever, somebody's imagination before it became solid and an object, before it became anything at all. So our creative mind is very powerful. So we're comfortable that following people who've proven themselves around the world, maybe written 101 books about their theories, and we all accept it. And it's difficult then to step aside from that and think, what do I really believe for myself about it? Or is there a theory that might work better? And I'm not saying one should doubt leaders. I'm just saying that if we follow a leader and have them on a pedestal, we could be suppressing ourselves from surpassing them. Right? So it's just, if you put everybody equal to yourself, everybody's got to comes into the world born equally, then you might start to rely more on your inner self and sensing and thinking, is that right or doesn't it work? I remember there was a chiropractor over on Southside, Frank Weiss, I went to several times, and I borrowed books off his shelves that were most intriguing. And one volume was by a psychiatrist called Briggs, B-R-I-G-G-S, Briggs, and I can't remember his surname, and Frank has long passed over, so I wouldn't know where to acquire those books, but it was a complete volume of all his lectures that he gave at university about the principles and talking about Freud and Jung and then his own conclusions. And I found it absolutely fascinating. And I thought, what an amazing person. This was, when John was teaching at TAFE, he had to do practical maths that they could apply in carpentry or plumbing or whatever they had to learn. And then often to stimulate their attention, he would screen a film by Velikovsky. What was his Christian name? Immanuel Velikovsky, and he challenged evolution. He said in his films that at certain times the planets move to such extent that they impact the Earth that it actually turns on its axis. And he claimed that that's why in the ice, in the North Pole, South Pole, whatnot, we find creatures perfectly healthy, often with food in their mouths and in their stomach, totally frozen instantly. And that was his claim. But the point is, it made all the students think outside the square. And I found it fascinating, and I'm not here to prove right or wrong or he was right, but it certainly opened my mind to a lot of things, you know. And then people talk about or establish that they find little bones here and there in pottery, and it's 40,000 years old or whatever. I listen to it, but I think maybe Velikovsky was right. Maybe, you know, the Earth did a big turn, because look at our weather at the moment. It's so fierce and intense. So you wonder how often this has happened before. I'm saying that to trust your inner self, to trust that you have the knowledge. So whether you believe in incarnation, reincarnation or not, if you believe in reincarnation, that you've chosen this particular lifestyle in this particular place on the earth, with these relatives around you, that you chose your parents, that you chose your mother, then I believe we have all the information inside to guide us through this life journey. So whatever problems we have, we've chosen to experience it. And that becomes a different ball game if you believe in it. If you believe, as I with Christian upbringing, that your soul has eternal life. Well, that's true, that soul is with you now. And if it has eternal life, I wonder where it's been before me, before I came into my body, and how long. Well, it goes on eternally, but that must be a very big source of knowledge. If it has eternal life, then it must gain a lot of knowledge. And we can all tap into that. And as I say, meditation is very difficult for us Westerners to think our mind a blank, to sit in the Lotus position or whatever and relax and think our mind a blank. And every time a thought comes into your mind, you think, oh, I'm not meditating, thoughts coming, damn it, start again. So it's very difficult because our minds are very active. But as I say, if you start tuning in to anybody in this room and seeing them as another human being, not just a person next to you or how they're dressed or what you know about them, just as a fellow spirit, then you start relating to that person differently and you start sensing things about it. As I say, I find the easiest to read a palm. Whenever people ask me to read tarot cards, well, I tried it a few times, and it's just a bypass for me. I've got to interpret a card and then tune into that. It's hard that you read palm, and it's an instant map for me. But if I select people at random at the audience, just to give examples, I can only. I remember there was a lady in the audience once, and she was around 50 or so, I'd say, late 40s, elegant young woman, and I said, I'd like to come to the lady in the third row, and I said, do you study? So I'm asking her questions. And she said, no. And I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw myself off track. I see with you rows and rows of books, bookshelves, rows of them. And I said, they're all textbooks, they're not novels. So my association with textbooks is study. And so instead of saying what I saw, sticking with what I see, what I feel, what I think, and it can come in any order you like. But what we see and don't see is a message for us personally. And in her case, so she said no, she wasn't studying. And I said, my apologies, my association with textbooks is study. I see rows and rows. She said, I work in a library. Then I was all right. I said, I'll go back to what I saw. I see rows and rows of books, textbooks. And I said, there's a young woman who started to work there recently, and you're having difficulty with her. And, I never mention names or try to embarrass people in public. And she said yes. And I said to her, I'll speak to you later on about that, what I was sensing, because it's not appropriate to tell her. That was here in Civic, in a room with they were at. Again, another time at the South Coast, I had I had 3 people in the audience that I hadn't seen before, but that's not unusual. There's often people I don't see. But I'm just saying I didn't know them. And I said, I've got somebody here in the spirit world who's standing next to you on the front, and he's waving his finger at you. He's angry at you being here. And I said, do you have somebody who's a minister of religion, because he's in a black robe and a white collar? And he's saying you shouldn't be here. And they all denied it. Nobody else said any people next. They seemed to be together. And after the service, he said his great-grandfather was the founder of Presbyterian. I'll think of it in a minute. It wasn't a Presbyterian church, but it was a church in Maria. And so he tells me afterwards, so when he said no, he couldn't relate to it, I thought, well, sometimes spirits turn up and they're just curious, or they're trying to make contact through me to someone else. And so I just let it go. But we probably didn't want to, we probably sensed that there were other parishioners in the audience, and he didn't want them to know that he was attending a spiritualist congregation. So I've got to be sensitive to where people are at. And if they don't want to know about it, don't want to hear about it, I just leave it there. It's not appropriate. Sometimes, also in that same hall in Tomakan, it was a community hall in Tomakan. There was a young woman once there with a couple of young boys, 7 or 8, that age group. And I described the person in spirit. I said, he died in a motorbike accident. And I said, he's concerned about you driving your car. He says it's not safe. And she said, well, I haven't got $800 to buy new brakes for the car. And I thought, that just took my breath away for a moment. I thought, you've got 2 young children there, it's not compulsory to come here, You could have asked a neighbour to drive you, but you don't drive a sound car. You don't drive a car with brake failure, risking your life on the road with 2 young children here in the car. So I didn't say anything. I said, well, I'll just leave that with you, because it's not my job to advise anybody or tell them what to do. I'm also legally not allowed to diagnose people. I can just say, I'm always very cautious with that. I'll go into that a bit later. Okay. As Graaff, we used to have a couple of properties at Graaff as an investment, which went very sour downhill, so don't ask me about how to make money or get rich, because that's not my forte. Anyway, we had these 2 properties on, John and I were staying in one, and I used the other to conduct a workshop for the weekend. Now, I had a delightful young woman, she was 40 at the time. I remember that because she had 40 crystals on a chain. Therefore, I remember that she was 40. Anyway, I gave them a simple exercise. I had brought in a glass carafe with a stopper on it. And because the group was from Christian-based upbringing, I didn't want to ask them to visualize a lotus flower in them, because people think that smacks of Hare Krishna or whatever they were uncomfortable with, and Indian cultures. So I said a white rose. No difference, it's your imagination. So I asked them to visualize a white rose inside this clear glass carafe with a stopper on it. And not everybody gets it, and that's okay. if you're not ready to see it, you're not ready. But Mrs. very quietly spoken young woman, in fact, she never moved her upper lip. She just moved her up from the bottom and spoke very softly. And she said, I couldn't get the image. And because I was in front of the audience, because what I do is, I stand in front of them and I give them creative visualization. And therefore I'm in a position to tune in, to sense, to absorb. Everything has sort of a turn and I move whichever way I the next one, I'm not sitting down, it's bothering me. And so I said, move. Sorry, I'm not used to all this modern technology here. Okay, I'll move back here. Anyway, so I sensed that there was something very important there for her. So I asked her to come and sit next to me. We had bar stools. I had bar stools, I remember that now. And I asked her to sit next to me and to absorb the energy from the whole group who'd all done the same exercise, visualizing a pure white rose inside a pure, clear glass carafe with the stopper on it. That was important. And she couldn't see it. And I said to her, what happened when you were 5? No, sorry. I said, what happened when you were 16 to do with being locked up? And she nearly collapsed on the bar stool, but I was standing behind her and gave her the energy of our whole shoulders. And I saw tell us about it. And she said, when she was 16, her mother was dying of cancer. And she had to look after her mother. But her friends were all playing outside and with each other. And she longed to be, as a 16-year-old girl, longed to be with her friends, but she felt trapped being with her mother. And she said, if my mother asked for a glass of water, I would or open the window or whatever, I would purposely turn the radio up loud so I couldn't hear her. So you can imagine the guilt complex she lived with by the time she was 40, having begrudged her mother a bit of attention. And then on top of that, her father was a minister of religion, and whenever she was naughty, he'd lock her in the laundry. So the fact that the rose was in an enclosed carafe with a stopper on it, she couldn't possibly visualize anything inside that carafe because it meant punishment and being locked up. Now, the interesting thing about it, she and her husband lived on a beautiful double-storey brick house with the beach on one side and a beautiful river on the other. They had a spectacular view. And she always felt she never had time to go to the beach. She said, well, I've always got so much to do, so she busied herself inside the house. And that was a punishment she was giving herself subconsciously for having been failed her mother when she was 16. And anyway, so she cried lots and the whole group was so upset, so we had to take a lunch break. And after lunch, it was a Saturday morning and this happened out of the blue, because I never know what comes out of the box. And so we took a lunch break, and after lunch, 2 other people came into the group who had to work in the morning. They said they wouldn't be back until 1. So I then asked if there was anybody there with a 16-year-old daughter. had one woman who just arrived. She said, I've got a 17-year-old daughter. And I said, that will do. So I had Kate and this other lady, can't think of her name now, but anyway, in a couple of comfortable chairs opposite each other. And out of the blue, I felt very comfortable applying Gestalt therapy. And I asked Kate to ask a woman who was a bit older than she was to be the mother. So I asked them, had them role playing, ask the mother for forgiveness for wanting to be with her friends and not being able to cope with being a nurse for a mother after school. And so you can imagine the impact of those emotions between the two women who didn't know each other, and I didn't know one of them had just come in. And then I asked them to reverse it, and I said, ask the mother character to ask the daughter to forgive her for expecting to be a nurse to her when she was in very poor health. And it's actually an adult's role to look after a dying person. A dying person, it needs a particular type of nurse. And so that happened. And then we took a deep breath, and I looked around, and it wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The impact of the emotions between those two and the liberation that came afterwards for all of them. And then I asked, and then the man who'd only just come in too, he said, I'd like to know what went on this morning before you came into this trauma. He said, I'd like to know what went on here this morning. So I said, well, before we take our afternoon tea break, what if we all stand up, hold hands and just chant Om, to just unite us all and settle the vibrations, because this has been heavy duty for all of us. And we did that, and then took a break. But just Om is a very uniting sound, and everybody takes a breath when it suits them. And so we did that, and it was very peaceful, and then we had a break. And I think in the afternoon we had other exercises. But the next morning, Kate came in, and she was vibrant and alive. Before, as I said, she didn't even move her upper lip, just at the bottom of it. She was very mousy and quiet, sort of, that's how she talked, frightened to live or breathe. And she said to the whole group, she put her arms out like this, she said, I went for a run on the beach. She said, and it felt great, and my husband came with me. And so all the time she lived in this beautiful house with spectacular views, she felt duty bound to stay inside. She felt guilty about going outside on the beach and being free to live and enjoy herself. So that went back right to her 16th birthday. So that happened in a matter of hours, and I knew nothing about her. I knew nothing about the lady who played a role, did a role play. And it was a very beautiful experience for all of us. And we're getting close to having to take a break now. And before that, I just want to say, I also went to a lot of Acupuncture meetings. I think a lot of Acupuncture group remember. Well, they have the chakras in different colour arrangement, different arrangement to what video or what's comfortable for me, and I've got gives that sort of information, developing your latent powers, 30 practical steps to spiritual satisfaction by Frederick Gould. And I also like your left through your lifetime within the living creature, the playful spiritual being that is real self. Don't turn away from possible tomorrows, possible futures, before you certainly don't have anything to learn from them. You're always free to change your mind and choose a different future or a different past. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. And therefore I think with depression, my father had suffered deep depression after my mother left him, and I tried to cheer him up, you know, and remind him of all the things. Oh, I can't do that anymore, I can't do that. So, but then I learned later on in life, when it was much too late to help my father, that you just accept. That's okay. His spirit needs to be depressed at this stage. And leave them be. Don't try to fix them up or cheer them up. That's not of my business. But stay right with their depression and what they would ask them what they would like to see changed in their life, or what would make them happy, or ask them when they first felt depressed and why. And then I also, people know we've got to take a break soon. I ask people to do an exercise for themselves at home, and you just, when you do it on a computer, you have two lists. One, of all the things you remember you enjoyed doing, before duty, before pleasure, just put in there. You know, when you're free, 5-year-old, playing in a kindergarten, what you enjoy, if you were making sandcastles, what did you enjoy about making sandcastles? Or if I always liked making things, whether that was weaving, paper, or whatever, something I could take home, or stickers. I was never any good at drawing or anything like that, so glue on stickers, you know, I like to make collages. And if you have the list of what you enjoyed doing as a child to what you became proficient at doing, or very good at doing, there are often two different things. Because what you become good at doing is often a trade or a qualification that you feel you've got to do for survival, or that you might enjoy doing, but that you've long outgrown that need, you no longer enjoy it, but you've got good at it. We asked a relative came in as to why he became a lawyer. John asked him, and he said, well, I was no good at maths, so what else is there to do? So he became a lawyer, and a very good one, but because he felt he was no good at maths. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? But that person is so particularly close-minded that if you ask him what he enjoyed doing, he wouldn't know, because I don't think he's ever stopped to think about it. But anyway, when we come back and we have our chat during the break, does anyone object to us chanting Om to unite us? If you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. The Eckhart people, because they say we're human beings and you, that you mean God, therefore they chant Well, I'm happier with Om, but if you want to chant you, go ahead. You know, okay, so I'd like to sort of take a break now, have a stretch, and then I'm open to questions, and perhaps do another exercise if you like, or whatever.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Give us a lot to think about. We'll go into our meditations now. Okay, we'd like to have a break very soon. We'd like to call on our friend over here to stand up and tell us about this art space. Okay. Introduce yourself. Over here, yep. And introduce them. Tell us a bit about you. This lovely man.
Hello everyone. My name's Colin Grant. I've been an artist for probably 30 years. I've had a number of exhibitions, and there's going to be an exhibition later this month at M16 Art Space, which is in Griffith, and it's basically an ACT library space that's been converted into an art gallery. It's a very nice space, beautiful floors, beautiful walls. They're paintings. I painted them mostly last year. I had a nice sabbatical time during the pandemic, staying at home, so I painted. And what thematically I've done with another artist, we're going to bring our paintings together and pair them and try and create a sum greater than the part. So there'll be sets of pairs. My paintings are very figurative. They have the human form. The other artist, Ballistic Green, paints much more like forests. And so there's a lot of differences between our works, so we strongly contrast, but we're working on that to create extra energy in the exhibition.
That's fantastic. And also, the exhibition's on Mother's Day.
No, it's the 20th of May.
Oh, May. Oh, the
20th of May.
Starts. That's
So
right.
a couple of weeks. It's called Illuminations, and I think Felicity grabbed that title from Arthur Rimbaud. One of his books of poetry.
Oh, fantastic.
So please, if you...
Got a little card, so you can get one.
I can pop a couple over there, yeah. So please do make your way over and take a look. It is one of those, it's a Wednesday to Sunday type gallery, and on Saturday and Sunday it's like 12 to 5, so it's an afternoon. Only open a few days a week and in the afternoon, so it does narrow down the opportunity, but it's a few on for a few weeks.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. We'll come over. Also, we've got the collective works of the Young books now at the back. I've got one at home, so don't panic if one's missing. It's, I'm using it as part of my art therapy course at the moment called Illuminations by Jung. So in transformation, but illuminations, but transformations by Jung. So, and it's a very interesting book. But they're very interesting. I've been looking at those. So we were able to get them by Robert Tulip, knowing someone at the Catholic Church, a lovely minister that Robert's met, and he was able to give us a fairly good price on them for $500. And we've had people been able to donate some money, so that paid for half the books. So if you feel passionate about donating any money towards it, we're very happy to receive that. And also we have the books over here. If you're a member, you can borrow the books in our library. But we can't borrow those ones, the collective works, because they might disappear in your cupboard and not be seen again. So, but you can look at them. We'll have them on the tables when you come in to on Friday nights. Okay, thank you very much. And I think everyone's probably needs a cup of tea now and a break. So we'll meet about 25 past, come back around there anyway. All right? So you can come and have a cup of tea.
Yes. You right, Barbara?
Okay. So before we start, I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day for the mothers and their presents. I was very delighted to get a parcel that was sent from my daughter from Central Coast, and it arrived just when I was coming home really late from work, 6:30 at night, and there was this parcel from my daughter. I thought, how special is that? That's pretty special. Anyway, I'd like you to now listen to Mary. Thank you very much.
Before we took a break, I suggested we might all chant Om, because we've been all over the place, a united group. Are you happy with that? If you don't have to chant. And just take a breath whenever it suits. And we'll just do that less than a minute. We don't have to do it for long. Okay. See if I can time that at the moment. Okay. Oh.
One more. Thank you. Thank you. Now, does anybody have any questions I'd like to ask? Otherwise, I'll give you another story. All right. Would you like to have another example? Okay. Actually, my last slide, number 13, I think, John. When we came back from our lunch break that weekend, there was a lady in the front row, and she was actually a neighbour, and she sort of said, when we came back and we did our on, and she said, well, Mary, to be honest, I couldn't see a white rose either in that crowd. And I thought we finished with the white rose, and I was ready to go on to whatever was on my program. And I said, no, with you, I get a choking feeling, a suffocating feeling, and you're about 5 years old, and it's as if you're stuck in something about, this big. And then she said, yes, she fell in the woods, she fell into a drain pit. So it was muddy and sloshy and whatnot. And the kids she was with helped her out of there. But she was living with her grandmother who was taking care of her. And her grandmother was so mad at this girl coming back, 5 years old, mind you, smelling, covered in grime and filth, having been trapped in this sewer or it was some drain hole. And she made her go outside and she hosed her off with an icy cold hose. And she scolded the girl for coming home so filthy, And so there again, the association of a white rose in a clear glass carafe with a stopper on it. She couldn't visualize because the feeling of being trapped and choking and suffocating was too intense. And it was not that long afterwards that she stepped out of the second marriage. She came in one morning very cheerfully when we were staying there. And she said, oh, Dennis and I decided that we'd never really been in love. We had 2 children each when we were divorced and decided it was a good idea to live together. It was easier. And she said, we never sort of got together out of love. So she split up and she went travelling all around the world. She bought her own house when she came back. And it turned a completely different life because she felt trapped and powerless to move. Whatever. So it's amazing how simple. So imagination is very, very powerful and interesting. Now, I've got another one there. I've forgotten what it is. Oh, the missing bridegroom. No, that's too long. The story, second page. 13, there's one below that, 14. Maybe I've told that story, 15. The next one. Oh, yeah. This was a young man I worked with, delightful person, and he wanted me to read his palm. So I'm at a reception desk. I said, oh, Mary, can you read my palm? And it doesn't work that way. You prepare yourself for sentencing. And I did. And I said, you're going to marry, he was a bachelor, and I think he was 40 or thereabouts. And I said, you're going to marry a woman with 2 children. No way, Mary. No, I'm not having any of that. And he's rubbing his hand. And he says, no, we're not. No. I want to start. No, he said, there's been a lot of girls, women in my life, but I'm not marrying anybody who's already got children. Anyway, about a month later, I got a phone call from him, and he said,
do you know, have you ever read the book Illusions? And this is our first copy. I said, yes, we have 4 copies of it because we're always looking them out, and we can't, and there's so much in there that we enjoy reading about Richard Bach. And I said, I'll bring you in a copy on Monday. Anyway, then I think he rang me again, and he said, oh, I've met this woman. Now, I've had a phone call from a woman I've met on my travels, and she lives in South Africa. And she's been reading the book Illusions and telling me about it. And he said, and we have so much in common. And I didn't say anything. I wanted to say, and she's got 2 children, you know, but I didn't say anything. A few days later, sure enough, he said, guess what? She's got 2 children, you know. And I said, yes. And I didn't go in on it. And he said, but it is changing, isn't it? He said, my lives are changing. And he's rubbing it like this. They have changed. I said, it's in your destiny. No, I did go to the wedding. He married a woman from South Africa with 2 children. But within a year, they were split up and divorced, and he's now happily married. He's 4 young boys and a delightful wife. But yeah, he still had to go through the procedure of marrying a woman with 2 children. That's in his destiny. He can't change it. So, any questions? Oh, that was Paul. Moving on, John, please. Finish with him. Yeah, the next slide, 15. Because I sometimes forget these things. Click on that one. Oh, the missing bridegroom. Oh, that's another one. That's what I call a heavy duty one. It was Monday morning, and I had my, as usual, I used to do a lot of spruiking around Canberra in the 70s. Spruikers are those annoying people with microphones that sell merchandise. And I've taken on the job because I wanted to overcome my fear of public speaking. I sort of used to dry up and sound like a neurotic housewife, and I wanted to learn public speaking. And then I saw an ad in the paper which said spruikers wanted. So I started at David Jones in town on Friday lunchtime, and she said, I was behind the counter. She gave me a microphone and said, well, just talk about the jewellery on the counter. And I didn't know, I was sort of looking over, trying to see the front was on the counter. Anyway, I did that for a number of years until I had my use out of it. And so this particular morning, I had to do some promotion in town, and I had my hair in hot rollers, and I had my false fingernails on, because when you're on the microphone, that's all people see, your face and your hands. So I used to have a big, huge knuckle dusters and big nails and big hair, whatever, false eyelashes. And anyway, so just about ready, the phone goes. And there's a woman on the phone, very nervous and distraught. And I had met her a few times at the Canberra jazz sessions on a Sunday afternoon in Dixon. They used to be held in Dixon. Sunday afternoon, John and I went to a few times. This particular woman was a chain smoker, and she drank very heavy. So through the haze of smoke on a Sunday afternoon, the noise of that stuff, I wouldn't know what she was ever talking about, but I can't really have a conversation. So I didn't know her about. Anyway, she said, I need your help. She said, my son went missing last night. She said, you knew I had a son. I said, no, I didn't. Well, he lived in Canada, and he's married a young woman. He's brought his bride out to Australia. Well, she didn't say that calmly and saying, yeah. And last night we were at a party, and when they got home, when his son got home with his young wife,
he said he wasn't ready for sleep and he wanted to go around for a burn on his bike around Lake Burley, and he never came back. So she said, the police have been looking for skid marks around Lake Burley, and there's no sign or trace of him or his bike. So here I am, getting ready for my spruiking, watching the time. I've got to get on a bus and go to my work with my amplifier and stuff. And so it's like a movie going forward. I have to keep her on the line, and she's babbling on and very distraught. We've all been up all night, and I'm here with my mother and my husband and the young bride. We're all very upset, and I don't know what to do because the police can't find a trace of him. So I have nothing to go by. I don't have a photograph. And when you start looking, and the first thing I always do is close my eyes and think, am I getting any images? And it's like, I say, it's like in a movie, and going fast forward, and you stop a little while, and finding a sun and a motorbike, a sun and a motorbike, no images at all coming to me. And I said, eventually I said to her, he never went for a burn around Lake Burley on his bike. And she said, but he did, his bike's gone. His bike's gone, and he's gone, and the police have been looking for skid marks. I said, there are no skid marks. He never went for a burn around Burley. Oh, where could he have gone? It was not. Anyway, I said, if he only told his young bride that he was going for, because he couldn't tell her the truth. Because he went to see another woman. I said, no, there's no way. She said, that's a terrible thing to say. They knew you married and they were madly in love. You could tell they were in love. My son is not that for any time. And she's babbling on, and, very annoyed with me. And I've got to listen to that, but I can't take her emotions into, if I've got to find her son, I can't go in what she's saying, but at the same time I've got to keep her voice there, because that's my only link in finding her son. So eventually, I can't remember which order I said that because it's so long ago. I think eventually said it was an older woman. I said that he met at a party last night, and she goes, "Is it a bitch with a green shirt on and the dark hair?" I thought she was a bit peculiar, and I thought she was good. You get all that on the voice. And I said, I don't get an image of her at all. And I'm still trying to find the son. A young man on a motorbike. No. And so I go with what I feel and the thoughts that come into my body that are not, and then I've got to translate in order to convey it to her. I've got to go into the headspace. So I said, and this is not the first time it's happened. Well, you can imagine the explosion on me. And I'm just about here eating a cigarette, and I knew she'd been drinking, and the way she was going, and she was absolutely mad with me for even suggesting. And she says, look, they've only just been married, they've only been in Australia for 2 weeks, and he hasn't had time to have an affair. And I said, no, I'm saying it's not the first time he's just disappeared like this. And then she went crying. She said, well, as a teenager, it happened a few times that he disappeared and then had no memory of where he'd been. And I said, well, each time that happened, he'd been with another woman, with an older woman. And I think she told me that I can't remember the sequence about how I expressed that to her, but it had something to do with when she had to move, the dog had to be put down, and he had to take the dog to the vet, and it's his responsibility. So therefore, in life, And at the moment he married this young woman he was in love with, he had to take on responsibilities, and particularly in a new country where she wasn't at all, didn't know anything about Australia. He had to take a leave, and that weighed too heavily on him, so he disappeared. Anyway, and she said, so what will I tell her? And I could tell she was within earshot. She said, I can, what do you want me to do? What do you want to ring the police? I said, nothing. I said, you've reported him missing and he's still missing. And I said, but he will come back. He will come home, he's safe. I get no feeling, I check my body, do I feel pain? No pain anywhere, no injuries, no broken bones. That's what I went through before. I said, you never went for a drive around Lake Burley Griff. And then I went on to do into town. I said, look, I've really got to go. I've got to go in. I said, he's all right, he's safe, and he will come back. Well, she quieted down after she related it to his teenage years when he'd gone off missing and had no memory of where he'd been. And I had explained to her as to why this happened. So I went off to do my thing. I set up my microphone, sort of out into the reading place. And then I see this woman approaching and a younger woman. I thought, oh, that must be the bride. Anyway, they waited till I took a break. And then they brought in a few beads and stuff that he used to wear when he was a teenager. And of course, I said, well, you know, that's too long ago, these beads. They had nothing to do with his life at the moment. When he was a hippie, he wore his beads. And so the woman is on one side, the young bride shivering on the other, looking at me, sort of, please, sort of bring back my husband. And this one's kicking me, don't tell her, you know, don't tell her she's kicking me, don't tell her. And anyway, so and I'm in the middle, and they're supposed to be my lunch break. And anyway, I said, look, he's not injured. I told him he's not injured. He will come home, and soon. And he came back after 5 days. But you know, you have the two forces. Someone's this terrified, helpless young woman in a strange country, and her bridegroom's gone missing, and the mother on the other side with all the, and I mean between the emotions. Anyway, he did come back with no memory of where he'd been. But it took about 6 days. He did come back. And yeah, and that's, I can't go in on it. And now I said to her, well, you need to see a professional about it. So I've pinpointed to where it came from, when to do with the dog. But I'm not qualified, and at that stage, certainly, I didn't have the capacity to help the son over this problem. And I couldn't betray him either and say to one that he's been with someone else. That's not my job either. I don't have to humiliate anybody or upset them. And yes, I do have to pick and choose what I relay. So, okay. So, but you do, I feel the information often comes from the solar plexus, and then there's a problem of translating it, particularly if it's about a subject that I don't know anything about myself. That's not in my brain, then I've got to try and verbalise it to get the knowledge across. Okay, yes?
Well,
Sorry?
my mother
Yes?
was an extremely unspiritual and very restful person. But she used to advise people on the basis of feelings, you know. And she had other experiences too. But I'm just wondering if you feel that these are abilities that are much more common than we think. And if you do think that, how do you think that people can go about releasing some of them?
Yeah, which is a good question. I believe we're all born clairvoyant, given that we are a soul. If we believe we have a soul, if we believe, whether we believe in reincarnation or just as in Christianity, that we are a soul and return to eternal life when our physical body disappears. But as a child, for instance, I used to come home from school, and our house stuck out from the rest of the homes. And I used to come along the street, my mother could see me coming from the side window. And by the time she opened the back door, I'd look at her, and I knew her face was different, her voice was different. And by that, I could sense, and I said, oh, Auntie Joan's been here, hasn't she? And Mum would say, how do you know? I can't read auras, but there's something about a voice channel, or if her father visited her, I just step into the lounge room and I think, somebody's been here, you know? And I said, Grandpa's been here. And Mum said, how do you know? And I couldn't express it. And I said, I could smell him. And she'd be most offended. Grandpa doesn't smell. But he did smoke a particular type of pipe with tobacco. And so in a sense I could smell him, but the room felt different. But I believe we all have that, except from early on, from the time we go and start learning things at preschool or whatever, and even our parents, you do join the dots up in something, or 1 and 1 makes 2, and you get it right, and you get praise. And so you start pleasing your teacher and your parents because it makes them happy. And if they're happy, they treat you better than if you're naughty. So you start getting that conditioning quite early in life to not rely on your imagination. And if you start, I used to sit in the corner and suck my thumb. And Mum said, "You're outside and play." I said, I'm thinking, and I was always thinking. But children should be outside playing, should be doing something. I have to be a thinker, you know, but it's at an early age that you start, you don't get intentionally suppressed, but it's not encouraged. It's not encouraged. I went to a weekend intensive by Paul Solomon. He was a minister in the Southern Baptist Church in America. And he said his father had been a minister in that church, and his grandfather, and he became a minister. He said, and my life was going, I had a very good life. He said, until my wife left me. And I not only lost my marriage, my job, my position, my whole belief system, because they didn't believe in that in divorce. And he said, and I started to reread the Bible a bit, and I started to see it differently. And he said, and I drove out of town, and I bought a packet of cigarettes secretly. And he said, no, I went out, not in town where people might see you, but out in the bush, in the woods, he called it, the Americans call it wood. And he said, I had another puff of a cigarette, and I expected the devil to come out and get me, you know. He said, this is real. It was so strong in me that smoking was evil, and the devil's influence. And then he said, and the devil didn't. And then he had, shortly after that, he had his first drink of alcohol, and the devil still didn't come out and get him, you know, and he started to see love, and he said, oh, it was after those experiences. And then he went out with another woman, and he said, I'm still there. And, you know, and then he started to reread the Bible and to read it from a different perspective,
and then he too became clairvoyant and had healing abilities. But I don't believe I have a gift healing, because I think it is a cycle, isn't it? If you give anything, you leave, you give anything, you're suppressing, you're holding yourself above somebody. But if you say, well, this person's here for me to learn, to cycle, or you start feeling more relaxed with that person as opposed to wanting to fix them up, then I find for me that works. Okay, but I believe we're all born that way. Okay, it's just we're not encouraged to develop it. Any more questions? Yes, Bob.
So you've talked about the relationship, if you like, on one-on-one of listening to a person and that sense of sort of what you can see in your third eye or through your solar plexus. Do you think that there's a way to use those sort of skills for the broader betterment of more people rather than simply one-on-one?
Well, in my workshops, people certainly have developed, that was the idea of it, that you don't have to be like a monk and an old babe sitting in a quiet place, but your sensing can be, start with creative visualization, whether it's an apple or a pear or a tree. Last time I asked people here to imagine a tree, and everybody's tree is different. But it tells you something about yourself, and also to become more true to your inner self is to do a list of things you enjoy doing and things you become good at doing. So often the things you become good at doing are for financial survival, and that might be what you want to do, but sometimes you don't have that option. But where you do have the option and the luxury of becoming more yourself and listening to your intuitive self, then you, but yeah, I did it for a long time, and I used to have private sittings as well, and people would come in and always ask them to record a session, because if you ask me the next day, if I'm tuning into a person, I can't the next day remember everything I've said. So I asked them to record it, and I once had a young woman and her boyfriend rang me 10 years later, and he said, well, I'm a friend of so-and-so, and you gave her a reading, and I listened to the recording. You gave it a reading 10 years ago, and everything you said came true. Well, I haven't got a faintest clue, so he came to see me, but I usually ask people to record it, because I can't remember. I tune into that person, but then I've got to cleanse myself from that and get on with my own. I can't remember everything. I find that comes out of me. The same as I can't even remember aboard a B&O cruise. I can't remember that lady's name or her husband's name, or they live somewhere out in the country. But I just happened to pick it up. I got up from the table, looked at her, and she said about her acupuncture for her back, because she had a bad back. And out of nowhere, I got this information that she'd fallen off a horse when she was 14. And another time, but sometimes people like that minister who was in the audience, who didn't want to acknowledge that he did have an ancestor in the spirit world who was in the Methodist Church. I think I said Presbyterian. He was the founder of the Methodist Church in Maruya, his great-grandfather. Now he's in the audience with probably his wife and whoever else. Extremely, he didn't. I said, I've got somebody here with a white collar and man of the cloth, a minister of religion, and he's annoyed with you for being here. And he didn't want to. I said, I leave it there. I don't humiliate a man, for he has his own private reasons for not wanting to be identified as such. So I leave it there. Okay. But yeah, if you concentrate on expressing your emotions and your feelings and checking your feelings, then you automatically become more sensitive and more aware and intuitive. Okay, and thank you all for your attention, and thank you for inviting me here and listening to my experiences. Thank you, it's been a pleasure. I hope you all have a nice weekend, and yeah, again, the ladies, that you have a nice Mother's Day. I'm going to have a quiet day. I've prepared well for it.
So thank you very much, Mary.
Oh, it's
And we're carrying
lovely.
some,
Beautiful.
but Robert's weighed them down, so we'll have to take them out of the bucket.
He's weighed them down. Thank you. Okay. Right.
So anyway, this is the certificate. So
Thank
thank you very much.
Jane.
Thank you.
It's always a
Yeah.
pleasure being here. And you're a lovely group of people, and it's nice. It's very good for the soul to be here.
Yeah,
So I've enjoyed my
evening. It's a
evening.
lot to think about. And we'll have to go home now and put our meditations into practice.
Yeah, you just have to tune in with something. So maybe I can put an evening aside that we do the exercises and see what we can feel and come out.
Yeah, that would
But
be
you
good.
do need to bring a notepad, because I can't concentrate on everybody at the same time. And even though this is being recorded, that the things to express your feelings or who you identify with. And so, okay, I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm a mum, I'm retired. You know, you have many ways of identifying as I'm a retired bookkeeper. You know, what sort of, I'm a human being, I suppose. I'm a soul.
We could do a workshop, another Friday evening, maybe a Saturday or something. And where
I'll
we can
think about that. Yeah, I sort of feel I'll turn 80 in 2 weeks' time. And I sort of feel I'm entitled to retire. So part of
retire.
but when there is interest in it, I sort of feel, yeah, I should teach people more about how to get in touch with themselves and be more intuitive. It's a very
Actually had an episode of that being intuitive on last Sunday. We was at church and I rocked up with the morning tea and no one was expecting it. I had an autumn leaf theme, an autumn theme for the church. Anyway, I was thinking about one of the young fellows that have had a lot of mental health issues. And I was just thinking about him. I was just thinking, oh, I'd really like to see him and say, hello, how are you? And there he was. He came into the church. He was living in Melbourne, going to uni. And I thought, oh, how amazing is that? When I was really just thinking about him, and there he was. Just rocked up.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Isn't it amazing?
You know.
I wasn't expecting that, but he said he was coming.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. My
Penny
pleasure.
tune is very good.
I hope you get more donations for
Oh,
your
that's all right.
Jungian books.
Oh, never mind.